Chapter 6. On my return, I found the following letter from my father to Vic Frankenstein. My dear Victor, you have probably waited impatiently for a letter to fix the date of your return to us, and I was at first tempted to write only a few lines, merely mentioning the day on which I would expect you. But that would be a cruel kindness, and I dare not do it. What would be your surprise, my son, when you expected a happy and behold, on the contrary, tears and wretchedness? And now, Victor, can I relate our misfortune? Absence cannot be rendered, you callous to our joys and griefs, and how shall I inflict pain on an absent child? I wish to prepare you for the woeful news, but I know it is impossible. Even now your eye skims over the page to seek the words which are to convey to you the horrible tidings. William is dead. That sweet child, whose smiles delighted and warmed my heart, who was so very gentle and yet so gay. Victor, he is murdered. I will not attempt to console you, but will simply relate the circumstances of the transaction. Last Thursday, May 7th, I, my niece, and our two brothers went for a walk in the main palace. The evening was warm and serene, and we prolonged our walk farther than usual. It was already dusk when we thought of returning, and then we discovered that William and Ernest, who had gone on before, were not to be found. We accordingly rested on the seat until they should return. Presently Ernest came and inquired if we had seen his brother. He said that they were been playing together, that William had run away to hide himself, and that he vainly sought and afterwards waited for him a long time, that he did not return. This account rather alarmed us. We continued to search for him until night fell, when Elizabeth conjectured that he might have returned to the house. He was not there. We returned again with torches, for I could not rest when I thought that my sweet boy had lost himself and was exposed to all the damps and dews of the night. Elizabeth also suffered extreme anguish. About 5 in the morning I discovered my lovely boy, whom the night before had been blossoming and active in health, stretched on the grass, livid and motionless. The print of the murderer's fingers was on his neck. He was conveyed home, and the anguish that was visible in my countenance betrayed the secret to Elizabeth. She was very earnest to see the corpse. At first I attempted to prevent her, but she persisted, and entering the room where it lay, hastily examined the neck of the victim, and clasped her hand, exclaimed, "Oh God, I have murdered my darling infant!" She fainted, and was restored to extreme difficulty. Once she again lived, it was only to weep and sigh. She told me that the same evening William had teased her to let him wear a very valuable miniature, whom she possessed of a mother. This picture is gone, and was doubtless the temptation which urged the murderer to the deed. We have no trace of him at present, although our exertions to discover him are unremitted, but they will not restore my beloved William. Come, dearest Victor, you alone can console Elizabeth. She weeps continually and excuses herself unjustly that as the cause of the death. Her words pierced my heart. We are all unhappy, but will not be an additional motive for you, son, to return to be our comforter. Your dear mother, alas, Victor, I now say, thank God that she did not live to witness the cruel and miserable death of her youngest darling. Home, Victor, not brooding thoughts of vengeance against the assassin, but with feelings of peace and gentleness that will heal instead of festering the wounds of our minds. Enter the house of mourning, my friend, but with kindness and affection for those who love you, not with hatred for your enemies. Your affectionate and afflicted father, Alphonse Frankenstein, Geneva, May 12th. Clerval, who had watched my countenance as I read the letter, was surprised to observe the despair that succeeded the joy that I first expressed on receiving news from my friends. I threw the letter on the table and covered my face with my hands. "My dear Frankenstein," exclaimed Henry, when he perceived me weep with bitterness, "are you always to be unhappy? My friend, what has happened?" I motioned to him to take up the letter while I walked up and down the room with extreme agitation. Tears also gushed from the eyes of Clerval as he read the account of my misfortune. I can offer you no consolation, my friend, he said. Your disaster is irreparable. What do you intend to do? To go instantly to Geneva. Come with me, Henry, to order the horses. During our walk, Clerval endeavored to raise my spirits. He did not do this by common topics of consolation, but by exhibiting truth and sympathy. Poor William, he said. That dear child. Now he sleeps with his angel mother. His friends mourn and weep, but he is at rest. He does not now feel the murderer's grasp. The sun covers his tranquil form, and he knows no pain. He can no longer be a fit subject for pity. The survivors are the greatest sufferers, and for them time is the only consolation. Those maxims of the Stoics, that death was no evil, and that the mind of man ought to be superior to despair, and the eternal absence of a beloved object ought not to be urged. Even Cato wept over the dead body of his brother. Clerval spoke thus as we hurried through the streets. The words impressed themselves on my mind, and I remembered them afterwards in solitude. But now, as soon as the horses arrived, I hurried into the carriage and bade farewell to my friend. My journey was very melancholy. At first I wished to hurry on, for I longed to console and sympathize with my loved and sorrowing friends. But when I drew near my native town, I slackened my progress. I could hardly sustain the multitude of feelings that crowded into my mind. I passed through scenes familiar to my youth, but which I had not seen for nearly 6 years. How altered everything might have been during that time. One sudden and desolating change had taken place, where a thousand little circumstances might have, by degrees, worked other alterations which, although they were done more tranquilly, might not be less decisive. Fear overcame me. I dared not advance, dreading a thousand nameless evils that made me tremble, although I was unable to define them. I remained 2 days at Lausanne, in a painful state of my mind. I contemplated the lake. The waters were placid, no calm around, and the snowy mountain. The houses of nature were not changed. By degrees, the calm and heavenly scene restored me, and I continued my journey towards Geneva. The road ran by the side of the lake, which became narrower as I approached my native town. I discovered more distinctly the black sides of Jura and the bright summit of Mont Blanc. I wept like a child. Dear mountains, my own beautiful lake, how do you welcome your wanderer? Your summits are clear, and the sky and lake are blue and placid. Is this to prognosticate peace, or to mock at my unhappiness? I fear, my friend, that I shall render myself tedious by dwelling on the preliminary circumstances. But they were days of comparative happiness, and I think of them with pleasure. My country, my beloved country, who but a native can tell the delight I took again beholding thy streams, the mountains, and more than all, thy lovely lake. Yet, as I drew nearer home, grief and fear again overcame me. Night also closed around, and when I could hardly see the dark mountains, I felt still more gloomily. The picture appeared a vast and dim scene of evil, and I foresaw obscurely that I am destined to become the most wretched of human beings. Alas, I prophesied truly, failed only in one single circumstance, that in all the misery I imagined and dreaded, I did not conceive the hundredth part of the anguish I was destined to endure. It was completely dark when I arrived in the environs of Geneva. The gates of the town were already shut, but I was obliged to pass the night in Saumont, a village half a league to the east of the city. The sky was serene, and I was unable to rest. I resolved to visit the spot where my poor William had been murdered. I could not pass through the town. I was obliged to cross the lake on the boat route Glenfast. During the short voyage, I saw lightnings playing on the summit of Mont Blanc, and the most beautiful figures. The storm appeared to approach rapidly, and on landing I ascended the low hill that I might observe its progress. In its advance, the heavens were closed. Then I soon felt the rain coming more slowly in large drops, but its violence quickly increased. I quitted my seat and walked on, although the darkness of the storm increased every minute, and thunder burst in a terrific crash over my head. It was echoed by Salé, the Juras, and the Alps of Savoy. Vivid flashes of lightning dazzled my eyes, illuminating the lake, making it appear like a vast sheet of fire. Then, for an instant, everything seemed for a pitchy darkness, until the eye recovered itself from the preceding flash. The storm, as it is often the case in Switzerland, appeared at once in various parts of the heavens. The most violent storm hung exactly north of the town, over the part of the lake which lies between the promontory of Bellevue and the village of Capet. Another storm enlightened Jura with faint flashes, and another darkened and sometimes disclosed the Mole, peaked mountain to the east of the lake. While I watched the storm, so beautiful yet terrific, I wandered with a hasty step. This noble war in the sky elevated my spirits. I clasped my hands and exclaimed loudly, "William, dear angel, this is thy funeral, this thy dirge." As soon as I said these words, I perceived in the gloom a figure which stole from behind a clump of trees near me. I stood fixed, gazing intently. I could not be mistaken. A flash of lightning illuminated the object, and discovered its shape plainly to me. Its gigantic stature, and its deformity of its aspect, more hideous, belongs to humanity, instantly informed me that it was the wretch, the filthy demon to whom I had given life. What did he there? Could he be, I shuddered at the conception, the murderer of my brother? No sooner did that idea cross my imagination than I became convinced of its truth. My teeth chattered, and I was forced to lean against a tree for support. The figure passed me quickly, and I lost it in the gloom. Noting the inhuman shape could have destroyed that fair child. He was the murderer. Could not doubt it. The mere presence of the idea was irresistible proof of the fact. I thought of pursuing the devil, but it would have been in vain. Another flash discovered him to be hanging among the rocks, so nearly perpendicular since we must leave, a hill that bounds the plain to the south. We soon reached the summit and disappeared. I remained motionless. The thunder crashed, but the rain continued. The scene was enveloped in a perpetual darkness. I resolved in my mind the events which I had now sought to forget. The whole train of my progress towards creation, the appearance of my work in my own hands alive at my bedside, its departure. 2 years had now nearly elapsed since the night on which he first received life. And was this his first crime? Alas, I turned loose in the world in a wretched grave, the depraved wretch whose delight was in carnage and misery. Had he not murdered my brother? No one can conceive the anguish I suffered during the remainder of the night, which I spent cold and wet in the open air. But I did not feel the inconvenience of the weather. My imagination was busy in scenes of evil despair. I considered the being whom I had cast among mankind, and endowed with the will and power to effect purposes of horror, such as the deed which he had now done, nearly in the light of my own vampire. My own spirit let loose from the grave, forced to destroy all that was dear to me. Day dawned, and I directed my steps towards the town. The gates were open, and I hastened to my father's house. My first thought was being charged with the fact. The poor girl confirmed the suspicion with great measure by her extreme confusion of manner. This was a strange tale, but it did not shake my faith, and I replied earnestly, "You are all mistaken. I know the murderer, Justine, poor Justine, is innocent." At that instant my father entered. I saw unhappiness deeply impressed on his countenance, and he endeavored to welcome me cheerfully, and after we had exchanged our mournful greeting, would have introduced some other topic than that of the great disaster, had not Ernest exclaimed, "Good God, Papa! Victor says he knows who the murderer was." "We do also, unfortunately," replied my father, "for indeed I'd rather been forever ignorant than have discovered much depravity and ingratitude in one I value so highly." "My dear father, you're mistaken. Justine is innocent." "If she is, God forbid that she should suffer as guilty. She is to be tried today, and I sincerely hope that she will be acquitted." This speech calmed me. I was firmly convinced in my own mind that Justine, and indeed every human being, was guiltless of this murder. I had to fear, therefore, that any circumstantial evidence could be brought forward strong enough to convict her, and in this assurance I calmed myself, expecting the trial with eagerness, but without prognostication of evil insult. We soon joined by Elizabeth. Time had made great alterations in her form, and I at last beheld her. 6 years before, she had been a pretty, good-humored girl, whom everyone loved and caressed. She was now a woman in stature, in expression, and countenance, which was uncommonly lovely. An open and capricious forehead gave indication of good understanding, joined to great frankness of disposition. Her eyes were hazel, and expressive of mildness, now through recent affliction, allied to sadness. Her hair was of a dark, rich auburn, her complexion fair, her figure slight and graceful. She welcomed me with great affection. "Your arrival, my dear cousin," she said, "fills me with hope. You perhaps will find some means to justify my poor guiltless Justine. Alas, who is safe if she is convicted of the crime? I rely on her innocence as certainly as I do my own. Our misfortune is doubly hard for us. We have not only lost a lovely darling boy, but this poor girl, whom I sincerely love, is to be torn away even by a worse fate. If she is condemned, I will never show joy. But she will not. I am sure she will not. And then I will be happy again, even after the sad death of my little William." "She is innocent, my Elizabeth," I said, "and that shall be proved. Fear nothing, but let your spirits be cheered by the assurance of her acquittal." "How kind you are! Everyone else believes in her guilt. That made me feel wretched, for I knew that it was impossible. But to see everyone else prejudiced in so deadly a manner, rendering me hopeless and despairing," she wept. "Sweet niece," said my father, "dry your tears. If she is, as you believe, innocent, rely on the justice of our judges, the activity with which I shall prevent the slightest shadow of partiality.